In this video, we're going to talk about the positioning properties in Webflow. So the position, you can find it on the right hand corner under the position panel. And you can see that we have 5 positioning. Static, which is going to be the default positioning for all elements. And essentially the behavior is that the elements follow the normal document flow. So they are not affected by top, bottom, left or right properties. Then we're going to have the relative, absolute, fixed, and sticky. So starting with the static, as I mentioned, this is going to be the default. Now, whenever you add an element, the position of that element is likely going to be static. So for the most part, this one is going to be fairly straightforward as it's going to follow the normal document flow. Now things get interesting when we start exploring some of the other positioning items, such as relative. Now relative is going to be an element that is positioned relative to its normal position. So from a behavior standpoint, you can adjust the element's position using top, bottom, left, and right properties. And the element will still take up space in the document flow as if it were static. So if I select an element and I change it from static to relative, you're going to notice that now we're going to have this positioning properties applied to it. So if we start adjusting them, you can see how this gives us some ability to change the positioning. Now this is going to be extremely important, especially as we're going to explore the absolute and relative relationship with the positioning. And on top of that, there is this new item, which is going to be the z-index. Now the z-index is essentially going to give us the ability to work sort of in a 3D space, in the sense that if this element is behind the main image, you can add a higher zx number. So for example, in this instance, we have a z-index of 1, and this image is, if we actually add a z-index of 10, you can see how now it's going to be on top of the search. So just a quick heads up on that. It's almost like layers in Figma or Photoshop. The one on the top is going to win the hierarchy. So that's that. And if we explore the following positioning item, which is going to be the absolute, well, the absolute is going to be an element which is positioned relative to its nearest positioned ancestor, not which doesn't not has to be static, or to the initial containing block if no positioned ancestors exist. So from a behavioral standpoint, it is removed from the normal document flow, and that is really important, meaning that it does not affect the position of other elements and vice versa. So let's take an example. I'm going to select the search bar, and I believe that there is a header section or wrapper right here. So this header wrapper, which contains the image and also this search bar right here, I'm going to apply it a position of relative, which is already here, and then to the search bar I'm going to make this absolute. Now as you can see, now there is this relationship between the absolute element and the relative element, and I can for example bring this one to the top right, and as you can see, the absolute element is going to work within the boundaries of the first relative element, which is going to be the parent element that it finds. Now it usually used to be quite tricky with CSS sometimes to understand which relative parent is the absolute element is referring to, but thankfully Webflow makes it extremely easy with this view, as it shows us what element is relative to. And as you can see, the moment that I hover over it, you can see that now the header bottom wrap is selected. So we have confirmation of what we just did. And you can easily just also add values directly from here. So I can say it's going to be 32 and then 25% from the top. So you have quite a bit of variance. You can also simply utilize one of the shortcuts if that's going to help you fulfill the goal eventually. So that's that. And now let's talk about the very next element in the positioning menu, which is going to be the fixed. Now, fixed are going to be elements that are positioned relative to the browser window or viewport. Now, what does mean is that the element remains in the same position even when the page is scrolled. So it is also removed from the normal document flow. And if I click on fixed and I apply a bottom left right here, you can see at the moment that I scroll down, this element is essentially going to stay with us. And this is going to be extremely useful for elements such as chat boxes, or maybe there is a cookie or privacy policy notification, or any notification really, even the types that you find on the top headers. Although for headers there is a better positioning element, which is going to be the sticky. Now if we simply go back and I'm simply going to Command Z my way back to the original, you're going to notice that if we selected the navbar, we're going to have the position of sticky. Now the definition is this one: an element switches between relative and fixed positioning depending on the user's scroll position when it comes to the sticky element. And the element essentially is treated as relative until it crosses a specified scroll threshold, after which is treated as fixed until it reaches the opposite threshold. So this is one of the advantages of the sticky. So if for example I adjust it like this, you can see how now it's going to essentially stay with us in that specific position. If I simply select 0, you can see how now it's going to behave exactly as we would expect this header to behave, which is staying on the very top section. So this is it when it comes to this positioning values. Now I understand that some of these might be a bit intimidating and overwhelming at first, but you're going to understand them in no time as long as you keep practicing. So my recommendation would be to stop the video now and start experimenting with what we just mentioned in terms of the concepts, and you're going to assimilate these in no time.